Have you ever wondered why some women haunt a man's memory long after they're gone? Not with desperation, but with silence, with poise, with the kind of distance that bruises his ego more deeply than 1,000 harsh words ever could. She doesn't scream, she doesn't beg, she simply disappears, and something primal inside him begins to unravel. This woman, the one who walks away without looking back, doesn't merely exit the room. She departs his psyche, and that departure creates a void that no other woman can quite fill. Her absence is not passive, it is an active force, a mirror he cannot escape. She becomes the ghost in his dreams, the ache in his chest when another smiles just like she used to, but without the depth, without the fire, without the wound. Carl Jung would call this the eruption of the anima, the feminine archetype that dwells in the unconscious of every man. When she leaves, it is not simply her he mourns. It is what she touched inside him, the parts he never dared to face. The woman who walks away doesn't just abandon the man, she awakens him. Or rather, she awakens the inner chaos that he has long sedated with control, with pride, with ego. But she is not concerned with awakening him. That is not her mission. Her mission was herself. Most men don't realize what they had until they're left alone with the silence she leaves behind. But that silence is not empty, it is loud. It echoes with every moment he took her for granted, every dismissive glance, every missed opportunity to see her, not as an accessory to his life, but as a sovereign being. You see, the woman who walks away with grace and certainty does something far more threatening than anger ever could. She activates regret, and not just surface-level regret, but deep, soul-level grief, the kind that doesn't scream, but simmers for years. Because what she took with her wasn't just her presence, she took with her the reflection of his potential, the version of himself he glimpsed only through her eyes. He will try to replace her. He may flood his life with distractions, with other bodies, with noise. But it is a futile attempt to fill a space that was never physical to begin with. He is chasing a ghost, not of her, but of the part of himself that came alive when he was with her. And she, in her feminine stillness, understands this, not with arrogance, but with calm certainty. She knows her absence is more powerful than any plea, because her worth was never something she tried to prove. It was simply something she remembered. This kind of woman is not made in the light. She is forged in solitude, in trauma, in the dark nights where she held herself while the world tried to diminish her glow.
And that's precisely what makes her unforgettable. Not her beauty, not her charm, not even her love, but her self-possession. The woman who walks away from a man does not do so casually. She does it as an act of individuation, a breaking away from the false self that once tolerated half-love, breadcrumb affection, and masculine avoidance. When she leaves, she isn't just closing a door, she is reclaiming her story. And in doing so, she pierces through his persona. The mask he wears for the world begins to slip. Because only a truly powerful woman can expose the boy in the man, the one still chasing mother's approval, still hiding from his pain, still terrified of a love that demands accountability. She does not wait for him to rise. She rises without him. To the man, she may appear heartless, cold, detached. But that is only because he cannot comprehend a woman who no longer needs to be needed. He confuses emotional sovereignty with cruelty. He mistakes her boundaries for betrayal. He does not yet understand that her love was not a cage but a door, one he refused to walk through, and now it is closed. This is the first thing a man cannot forget, the way she left without chaos, without the dramatic farewell, without making herself smaller just to be kept. She walked away not in anger, but in wisdom. And that, more than anything, threatens the fragile illusions he built around his worth. Because deep down, he knows the kind of woman who can leave without needing to be chased is the kind of woman no man can truly replace.
She becomes an echo in his psyche, not because she screamed, but because she never had to. Her silence carries a weight that no confrontation ever could. And in that silence, the second unforgettable truth begins to root itself inside him. She saw him fully. Not just the mask, the posturing, the performance. She saw the shadows he tried to deny. She saw the boy beneath the bravado, the unhealed wounds behind the charm, the quiet desperation for validation masked as confidence. And he hated her for it, and yet he loved her more because of it. To be seen by a woman in this way, not just admired, but witnessed, is one of the most terrifying experiences for a man who has not yet met himself. Carl Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, the moment when the unconscious forces within a person rise to the surface, no longer able to be buried beneath distractions or denial. She did not need to expose his flaws. Her very presence was enough. A mirror so clear that he couldn't help but look. And yet, he looked away. Because to meet her gaze fully would have required him to evolve, to abandon the comfort of avoidance, to step into the responsibility of a higher self. But she didn't demand this transformation. That was never her role. She simply offered a reflection, an invitation. And when he declined it, she withdrew, not as punishment, but as protection, for herself, for her soul. And now, in her absence, the image of that reflection lingers. He remembers how it felt to be seen, not flattered, not worshipped, but recognized. And he will ache for that recognition again, not from others, but from himself. The tragedy, of course, is that the very woman who sparked that awakening is the one who will no longer be there to guide him through it. You, as a woman, may not know the magnitude of your gaze. You may not realize that what he cannot forget is not just the way you looked at him, but the way he felt visible in your presence. As if, for a fleeting moment, his soul was no longer in hiding. That sensation, that raw exposure, is both addictive and frightening. Because in a world where men are often praised for their masks, you offered him something rarer, intimacy without illusions. He may try to bury the memory. He may tell himself that you were too much, too intense, too emotional. But those are just labels men use when they're unwilling to hold the depth they secretly crave. He knows now that not every woman can touch him at that level. Many will adorn his life, few will pierce his soul. And that is the third unforgettable thing. You made him feel something he didn't know he was missing. It wasn't comfort, it wasn't chaos, it was aliveness. The electric, unnerving sensation of being cracked open by the presence of a woman who had already done her own inner work. You didn't try to complete him, you confronted him with what was incomplete inside himself. This is the essence of feminine spiritual power. It does not seek to dominate or seduce through tactics or manipulation. It simply is. It stands as a quiet storm, not asking to be understood, only to be met in truth. And when it is not, it vanishes like smoke through the cracks. He will chase stimulation in the aftermath, novelty, pleasure, validation, but nothing will feel quite the same. Because what you offered wasn't about chemistry or compatibility, it was archetypal, soul deep. And when the soul gets a glimpse of what is possible, no amount of surface-level affection can replace it. He might return months or years later, hoping to find you where he left you, but you won't be there. Because here is the hidden truth. The woman who walks away is not the same woman she was when she stayed. She does not wait in stasis. She evolves. She flourishes. She becomes what she once begged someone to reflect back to her. She learns that wholeness was never meant to be found in someone else's hands. And for the man left behind, this realization cuts deeply. He did not lose a woman. He lost the portal to a part of himself. He remembers your calmness, your silence, your unwavering decision to choose peace over chaos. He remembers how you looked at him when you saw through his defenses. And most of all, he remembers how he felt in your presence, vulnerable, alive, almost real. And that, more than anything else, is what he cannot forget. The fourth thing that a man cannot forget is the moment she no longer needed him, not in anger, not in revenge, but in spiritual finality. There is a quiet death in this moment, and it is not hers, it is his. The death of the illusion that she would always be there. The ego believes it can delay, it can neglect, it can take without giving and still be adored. But when a woman rooted in self-respect decides to stop waiting, there is no ceremony, no warning, no grand confrontation. There is only withdrawal, calm, dignified, irreversible. This is not the kind of woman who yells down the hallway in tears. She does not throw plates or beg to be chosen. That's the woman she once was, but not anymore. She has faced herself too many nights to ever again surrender her power to the unpredictable whims of a man lost in his own projections. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And this woman has taken that path, even when it led her through fire, abandonment, rejection, and the ache of becoming unseen. She no longer lives in a fairy tale. She lives in her truth. And that truth has taught her this: love that costs your soul is too expensive. He remembers the way her energy changed. She no longer tried to explain herself. She no longer asked what was wrong. The fire in her eyes became still. Her laughter, once filled with warmth and anticipation, grew rare. Not bitter, just distant, as if it belonged to another time. He thought she was pulling away. In truth, she was returning to herself. The pain of this shift is not just emotional, it is existential. Because when a man loses the woman who once orbited his world, what collapses is not only a relationship, but the myth of control. The illusion that she would always be there, always waiting, always forgiving. He may say she changed, and he would be right. But what he does not realize is that the version of her who stayed was not her final form. It was her wounded self, the part that still believed love had to be earned through suffering. Once she saw that her worth wasn't a negotiation, she no longer had the appetite to explain her boundaries to someone who kept crossing them. This is what he cannot forget, the way she stopped fighting for him and started choosing herself. And yet, she loved him. That is the paradox that binds him. She loved him not with neediness, not with obsession, but with soul-level recognition. She saw his potential. She believed in his inner king even when he was acting like a wounded child. But her love was never meant to be therapy. It was meant to be mutual evolution. When she walked away, it wasn't because she stopped loving. It was because she started loving herself more. Now, every woman who comes after will be held to the standard she never even voiced out loud. He will look for her in different eyes, different voices, different touches, but he will never quite find her. Not because she was perfect, but because she was real, and real leaves a mark. That's the most haunting thing about a truly embodied feminine presence. It lingers, not in desperation, but in resonance. Her memory does not knock at his door. It sits like a perfume in the air, like a melody that once played during the most vulnerable night of his life. It doesn't fade, it imprints. And the tragedy is that most men don't awaken until it's too late, because to cherish her would have required a version of him that hadn't yet been born, a version that could have held her without possession, loved her without fear, seen her without trying to dim her light. But men like that are not born in comfort. They are born in loss. That's what she became, the catalyst, the turning point, the sacred mirror that cracked. And though she is gone, her essence stays, not as a regret to be resented, but as a standard he now realizes he was never ready to meet. He can't forget her, not because she begged to be remembered, but because she was unforgettable. in her silence, in her sovereignty, in the grace with which she chose peace over proving a point. And somewhere in the deep recesses of his soul, he knows. He didn't just lose her. He lost the man he could have become beside her.
There is a fifth thing, and perhaps the most piercing of all, that a man can never forget about the woman who walked away. She made him feel replaceable, but only after giving him the chance to be irreplaceable. She offered him something sacred, not in words, but in presence, a place within her heart where he could have rooted himself, a chance to rise beside a woman who asked for nothing but authenticity, depth, and devotion. And for a time, he was there. But the truth is, many men do not value what is freely given until it is locked away. He may not have said it aloud, but deep down, he believed she would always remain, that the depth of her care ensured her permanence, that love, real love, was an eternal safety net, not a sovereign choice. And so, he tested her, not deliberately, not maliciously, but out of habit. He withheld tenderness. He gave just enough. He pulled back when she opened. He leaned in when she grew weary. A slow, silent game of emotional tug-of-war. But here is where the feminine mystery reveals its deepest wisdom. She does not threaten to leave, she simply watches. And when the watching is over, when she has seen enough, when she has bled quiet tears alone and danced with her own worth in the shadows of rejection, she slips away. Not to punish, but to preserve. This is what the man remembers. He had his chance. He had the keys to her inner temple. He was trusted with her softness. He was given access to her vulnerability, the most guarded part of any woman who has healed herself. And in failing to honor it, he did not just lose her body or her attention, he lost her trust. And once trust leaves, there is no poetry, no apology, no grand gesture that can coax it back. What remains in its place is not bitterness, but indifference. The kind of sacred indifference that only emerges when a woman has buried the last version of herself that still believed in his potential more than he believed in his own. He remembers her strength, but what haunts him more is her ease. How she stopped arguing, how she stopped asking for more, how she began to glow not because of him, but without him. He may say she moved on quickly. What he doesn't understand is that she didn't move on, she rose. And she was always meant to. Carl Jung spoke of the anima as not just the feminine image within man, but as a guide to his inner world, a force that challenges his superficial self to evolve. The woman who walks away becomes this anima incarnate, not to flatter him, not to complete him, but to confront her with the truth of her incompleteness. The pain of losing her is not merely heartbreak, it is the shattering of illusion. He didn't lose the fantasy of love, he lost the mirror that exposed the difference between affection and alignment, between attraction and connection, between being wanted and being chosen. And now he lives in the aftershock. The quiet moments when he reaches for his phone and doesn't know who to call. The nights when his soul longs not for sex or validation, but for depth, for conversation, for her. For the way she looked at him when she believed in his dreams more than he did. And still, she does not return. Because this kind of woman does not look back once she has seen enough. She blesses the past, but she does not live in it. She no longer bleeds for the man who only ever offered bandages. She no longer fights for love with someone who confuses emotional intimacy with loss of control. This is the final echo that lingers in his mind. She was willing to choose him until the moment she had to choose herself. And now, no matter how many women enter his life, they will all carry a silent question in their eyes. Why didn't she stay? But only he will know the answer. Only he will carry the memory of her departure like a scar, not bleeding, but permanent. And perhaps, if the grief carves him deeply enough, he will begin the journey he once resisted, the journey inward. The slow, brutal unraveling of ego, the confrontation with shadow, the reconstruction of integrity. Not to win her back, but to finally become the man who could have loved her right.
If he is lucky, her absence will break him open just enough to let the light in. And if he is wise, he will not seek another version of her. He will become the version of himself she always saw. Because that, in the end, is what she gave him. Not just love, not just passion, but the invitation to become. And when that invitation was declined, she did not scream, she did not wait, she walked. And now, for the rest of his life, he will remember, not the woman who begged to stay, but the one who knew when to leave. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.